Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up. 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 Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
I pressed the wrong button.
Oh,
God. It's so aggravating. They've got the go off stage button next to the share material button, and every time I press it. God.
yeah.
Aggravating. There we are. How are you, Ben?
I'm very good. Hello. Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday to you, and welcome everybody to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market and insurance, culture, technology change, and this week a little bit of a focus on ESG. So let's kick off with a rapid-fire news. Ben, why don't I play this? I haven't played this for ages. It's the news jingle. This will get us in the mood. Try this. News wrap. Wow. There we go. So let's start with a bit of news then. I think we got WTW, haven't we?
Yeah. So Aon WTW has been cleared by the EU authorities. So its merger has been cleared. But it has not yet obviously been cleared by the US Department of Justice, and there are other regulators considering around the world still. So there's lots and lots of snags and hitches. The main one, though, is obviously in the US, and they have been battling over the court date in the US. It's been currently put to November the 18th. But now you'd never get a judge called with this name in the UK. Reggie Walton, the district judge in the US, has said it probably will have to be pushed back to January or later in 2022, because he and his courts are dealing with all of the capital rights at the end of Trump's presidency, and he said there's just too many cases going through at the moment, so this has got to wait its turn. So mundane, but rather fundamental, and must be very frustrating for the people at Aon and Willis. But we'll see. It trips along.
It does indeed. So we've also got the story about the. This is brilliant. The FCA lost devices.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite incredible.
Yeah.
Go for it, Ben.
So two headlines this week. One is the FCA is getting tough on the financial sector next year. and realizes it's been a bit of a soft touch, I think. But at the same time, this story came out, which is far more interesting, which is, has anyone seen my laptop? So they have managed to lose equipment, 323 electronic devices worth over 300 grand in the last 3 years. And some ridiculous figure in 2021, like 300 or 250 or something. So there's something going on. So apart from the cost, of course, there's a security issue here that FCA data is being lost and in the public arena. So yeah, pretty crazy. I can't imagine how you can lose that many laptops. I guess it depends on how many you've got in the first place, but I can't imagine it's thousands.
I'd be absolutely livid if I was losing that amount of equipment from my business. I'd be going, what's happening? Where is it?
I mean, it's got to be a fraud or something, hasn't it? I mean, that number going, 323 electronic devices.
Yeah. How many people work there? It's like, crikey.
325.
Yeah. And then we got a bit of news around the SQL 6 popping up again.
Yeah, so this is a quick one. So the SQL 6 apparently is moving forward one API standard to rule them all. So they're looking at standards with Accord and the 6 players here, Mark L. Beasley, Hiscox, Chaucer, Brit and Liberty, all working, burrowing away. And this is their latest press release. So it looks like they seem to be confident that they're moving towards some kind of accord, I guess, and they will be pushing forward on this. They've got a horrid acronym called CERTS, which I've forgotten what it stands for now. Tried to look it up, but it doesn't really matter because it's just horrid. It's not snappy. But anyway, they do look like they're moving forward. This is quite interesting how this works in parallel to Blueprint and so on, which they mentioned. Picking up on what we were talking about last week with the demise of PPL and that kind of area, it kind of almost leaves it open for the SQL 6 to move in and go, well, if you're not doing anything in the next 2 years, then here's the standards. Take it or leave them. Yeah, it's like a twin track now, isn't it? Because you've got the Lloyd's thing, which seems to be going backwards at the very, or static at the very least, and this sort of stuff from the suppliers working with the market players directly that seems to be moving forward quite rapidly, which is what you want in terms of competition, I suppose, and that could be a good thing. But it rather leaves, it looks like all the Lloyd's work in a way could be just kind of left high and dry, and this stuff is just going to push ahead.
Yeah, we'll see what happens over summer and into the autumn. So, that brings us on to our kind of main feature, which we're talking, well, 2 areas, aren't we? We're going to touch on ESG, which is just kind of bubbling up to the surface to be a real big issue on a number of fronts. So we're just going to explore that a little bit, and then we're going to play a clip from Claire Constable, who took part in the London Market Preview show, about her experiences around COVID and working, and then back to the office, which is another hot topic in a lot of organisations at the moment. So, do you ever look at ESG, Ben, and perhaps some of the factors, that's pushing the agenda? Yeah, so
ESG, I think it's worth us touching on this. We touched on fair value last week, but ESG has been really around for about the last 10 years or so, and it's been driven, as people will understand, by a number of different issues where corporate businesses, capitalism almost, is caught up in this, and a desire for change and transformation into a world where we have consideration in the capitalist world of these different factors, ESG as they've become known, environmental, social, and governance. And you can see, and I won't go through the list here, but wow, they cover a very, very wide territory. The real shift, and Gillian Tett draws attention to this in the FT, has come in the social area, in particular around but it also plays into other areas, really around the evolution of the smartphone. So basically, companies kind of 10, 15, 20 years ago and before could sort of ignore complaints from people about issues because there was no real way of them coalescing. And now with the smartphone, of course, and you think of things like Me Too movement, BLM, other climate change, Extinction Rebellion, all that sort of stuff. These are all really driven through the smartphone and the ability to communicate, and therefore the exposure to the little people. It's not Big Brother. It's, as someone said, it's lots of little Big Brothers all looking at you, and so the boards have been pretty frustrated because, of course, they see this as some of these things and say, well, hang on a minute, this is quite subjective. What are you asking us to do? We're supposed to be just running a business here. That's hard enough, let alone all this other stuff we've got to do. So quite recently at the G7 meeting, of which Boris hosted in Cornwall, they came up with the original name of the Cornwall Consensus. So this was the G7 talking about building better forward. And underpinning ESG is a huge shift of capital and investment into what we might call kind of green investments, so green bonds that have been raised. So this year alone, green bonds, which is kind of environmental stuff, 196.8 billion have been issued this year alone. So this is supporting companies' green investments, basically. But when you look at the social area and the kind of sustainability areas, that's grown to, that pot has grown to 201 billion. So it's even faster growth. And this was from 10 years ago. This was about 10 billion. So this is really huge shifts of capital into green types of company. And basically, the big issue is disclosure. Really, is now companies are being asked to disclose and evidence what they're doing and how exposed they are to climate risk, how exposed they are to reputational risks. They're obviously the fossil fuels companies around, as you can see here, sustainability and how they're going to get down to net zero, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a very substantial ask of these businesses in terms of disclosure and evidencing their green credentials, if you like, both to the regulators but also to the world at large. And it's accelerating. And there's a good example: Elon Musk ditching Bitcoin. So the speed of change is so quick. So he's ditched Bitcoin because of the pressure he had from people, ordinary consumers, if you like, and shareholders around the green credentials of Bitcoin. COVID has accelerated it, obviously, because it shows how interdependent we all are, and that's made it very clear that actually we're a pretty small world which is very vulnerable. So that is, a thing. So, and then this whole movement, if you like, of companies and businesses coming in to try and help companies, in inverted commas, with the data. And that's interesting because that has grown exponentially too. So the industry for data on ESG has massively grown, and there's a kind of scramble for businesses to get in on the act. But there's things. We had Waleed on a couple of months ago talking about his initiative, his company, which is about valuing assets in nature. So he's talking about elephants and their value, and then using that as a way of leveraging sustainable practices. And there's another example that I picked up here, which is that they have done a calculation that if bees became extinct in the world, there would be that would cost the world $217 billion. So all this is ratcheting up, so businesses have to get involved. And really, in the sense, we can talk about all of these issues and data and things, but what in investment terms is that's where it's really where the rubber hits the track. It's about a shift of investment and whether the investors are going to get returns from green companies or not green companies, and this is a huge sort of battle, I suppose, going on. And what they talk about, a phrase that's worth remembering on this, is double materiality. That means the risks that their operations pose to society, so an assessment of those, versus their profitability. So that's what the companies are needing to try and explain and disclose.
Yeah.
And lots are, and we can talk in a minute about some examples in the insurance sector.
I think you've done a little graphic, haven't you, here, Ben?
Yeah. So why are they investing? So these are the kind of three areas of investment. So materiality, customer demand, and regulation. These are the pressures, if you like, as well as the reasons why it's pushing forward. So materiality is basically about the value of the company, the risk and return. Customer demand is about transparency to the public and to your employees, for example. Regulation is basically the fiduciary duty. So you, as a company moving into a world of net zero and greening, if you like, you have to sort of look after the appeal of your company as an investment, and that's the kind of tensions. So various organisations have got different factors, and they're beginning to come together. It is the case that although these measures are somewhat subjective, they are beginning to get some standards together, and the EU has just promoted some of the banks. State Street, for example, has a thing called the R factor, which is the responsibility factor, where they have a pot of measures. So there's a coming together around this issue of materiality and measurement. And just one thing, just before we just have a quick chat about it, the investment idea, though, is quite tense, because one of the things about big shifts of money like this is it basically creates it's basically creating a situation in which you would get lower returns from these greener companies. So there's a counter effect in the investment. And the reason for that is, of course, that once all this money starts to shift, the share price of these companies goes up. So when you look at an expected return over time, you say, well, these are going to be expensive investments. And of course, then the investment turns the other way to those companies that are not green, because fundamentally, fund managers, fiduciary agents, as they're called in the US, I think, have to invest based on their fiduciary duty. In other words, as purely as an investment, not as a kind of moral or ethical decision. But they think that Biden might change that and loosen those rules. And if those rules loosen, then you move in the capitalist world from something which has been purely about money and profit into something that's more about the ethics and the morality and the greater good purpose, if you like, which we've talked about. So, sorry, just to finish off on the other side of this, then, is that green stocks are tending at the moment to outperform what they call brown stocks. So and that's because the share prices are going up and they're being valued high. So in other words, it's a bit of a bubble. It's getting pushed. The only way really that can be sustained is if we keep on getting hits like COVID or big catastrophes. The thing in the US at the moment with the heat wave and things like that. Those are big concerns to investors. So what they're doing is they're driving the mood, the attitudes of investors more towards green companies, which pushes the price up and makes them good investments still. So anyway, it's a as ever in the investment world, you have to make the bet on the right side of the argument or where it's going to make money, and that's no different here. But it's when all is said and done, this is gathering steam now, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop. And there's a huge amount of wide-ranging requirements for companies, and probably opportunities as well.
Yeah, I think so. Also, I was speaking to somebody fairly senior in Marsh, and this has suddenly become a huge agenda item, and it has, I think, across the board in Aon, AIG as well, just to name a few. But I think it's, for her, it was really about how do you take these, I guess, strategic objectives within ESG and make them real. And it's not about a box ticking exercise. It's about really fundamentally changing the culture of the organization to say everything we do is aligned with these ESG goals. And what she was saying, I'm just really conscious not to call this an initiative, because it's not an initiative. It's like it's a fundamental change.
Yeah.
And I thought that was brilliant, because firstly it kind of showed that Marsh had really got it. You know, they understood that this it's not gonna wash just to kind of just put a veneer of green across the organization, because I think, as you were saying, investors are going to dig deeper. They're asking for it in pitches. You know, are you walking the walk on this stuff? I think it is. I think it is a big opportunity as well, just from a talent and recruitment point of view, because this is so important to the next generation. I mean, just everything they are questioning. If you do that, what are the impacts on X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
And I think if you can demonstrate that what you're doing, a bit like Coldplay, you know, Coldplay said, I'm not playing another gig, not to be carbon neutral, but to actually be positive. We want to, you know, we want to do something that positively impacts the environment or what we do. So it's not just about being neutral, it's about positively doing stuff. And I think if you as a brand can do that, you will win on so many fronts. And build some sustainable competitive advantage in the medium term, surely.
Yeah, and I think the argument is one between the kind of hard-edged investment people who say, well, investments never change; they're always the same. You know, you have to assess them in a cold-hearted way. But that, as I've said before, here and other places, is not really taking account of ideas and how ideas take hold and why they matter. And I'll give you a good example, which was in the football, you know, and the Priti Patel argument over her saying it was gesture politics. And then the actually quite right-wing Steve Baker came on and said, look, we've got to actually listen as a party to what people are saying. These are viewpoints that you have to take on board. You can't just dismiss them. And I think it's the same in all of these areas now, where actually many, many more people are involved in the conversation. You've kind of democratized these conversations, and these ideas move at rapid pace. Some of them seem very superficial. Some of them seem, you know, you may call something gesture politics, but it doesn't matter. Once it's taken hold, that is, you know, that's for people to do it, and then you have to deal with that, and you have to work out what you do. I think I think those ideas at one end are driving things, and the mood, and really at this stage we're only in the foothills of even younger people getting on board with all this stuff, because I don't suppose most young people, if you said ESG to them, you know, outside of people who work in the sector or in those businesses, would know what that meant at all. But if you started to talk about some of the issues, they would. So, but it's the point at which it tips over into people say, well, we know what ESG is, and we know that companies have to have this measure or that measure. And then you're right, they'll start to judge that. They already are, but they'll have things to judge that against, and competition will shift and change again. But it's also quite an opportunity in the product space, I think, and it's also potentially disruptive. I mean, people have talked about Tesla, but Tesla has offers insurance already to people who buy electric cars. That's a kind of obvious example of a business that's disrupting the insurance business by saying we've got the car that most of the other manufacturers haven't, and it's a positive and sustainable purchase, as it were, and you get the insurance as well, which supports that. And that kind of threatens both the traditional insurers as well as the traditional auto space as well. So that's quite disruptive. But insurers are getting on board with some of this now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And just to kind of hammer home the point, I saw this Net Zero Insurance Alliance. I think it was announced last Sunday. It was fairly recent anyway. Basically 8 insurers, I think, have signed up to a commitment to individually transition their underwriting portfolios to net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. So, and that's been driven out of the, I think it's the UN, that's driven that and kind of organised it, and the chair is a group chief risk officer at AXA, so it's at board level, and it's not just the big organisations that are getting in on this. I also spotted that insurers plan green replacements for car and property write-offs. This was recently on the BBC website, so it does then play into the language of how you might package this up to consumers and think, oh, actually, I will take that policy because I do have green values as an individual. And even if this doesn't take off, so here they're talking about replacing write-off goods with environmentally friendly, either electric vehicles or boilers that are more efficient. Even if this doesn't take off, it's interesting to see these conversations coming out of stuff like the ABI that seems like quite a stuffy organisation, a bit reactive. But here, they're proactively thinking about what, as you were saying, what is the purpose of insurance as an industry, and how do we contribute to the kind of ESG agenda? So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and it's one area where you can see that their companies are very engaged and concerned, but also see opportunities. So you can see the really big players and the chief execs are getting right out there on the front foot with this. And it's probably, I haven't done the assessment, but I bet it's one of the things that's talked about most if you did one of those pie charts of things that CEOs talk about. So it's big, and also it's something that has to be set as strategy. For the board board oversight. So there are regulatory requirements, and as you inferred earlier, there are also other consequences of things. And I think what we're also learning as we go along is that there are potential sort of bear traps along the way for companies in all of this stuff. Is what could happen to us? What are the what ifs? The things that could sort of really hole us and really hurt us, and I think it's interesting, someone like Nick Clegg at Facebook brought on as a kind of high profile, acceptable face of business, I suppose, to try and talk. So Facebook was probably in early on this, seeing the risks and the potential rewards for looking like you're doing the right thing. But I suppose in the end, it's going to be as ever about what are the disclosures and how do you report that you're any good. And I think we talked about this before the show, and you talked about it could easily become a kind of tick box thing again. But there's so much going on. You just wonder how companies are going to get across all of this.
Yeah, definitely. Right. I'm conscious of time, so let's move things on. I just wanted to touch on return to the office, because that's another big story kind of this week, kind of with the government flip-flopping around over masks and what it means for employees traveling around to work when everything opens on Monday. And I thought I'd play a clip from the London Market Claims preview show. So we had a show a couple of weeks ago which was previewing the agenda for London Market Claims, which is a real world conference in October. And this clip, it's just a few minutes from Claire, but she's just sharing her experiences of COVID and returning to the office. So we'll play this and we'll come back. That room and
So to me, what COVID has done is accelerated what has been tried in the past anyway. To the mindset point, I think it has shifted the whole working from home mindset. I'd heard many times before this happened, if you're working from home, you're not working, Claire, are you really? And I'm a big proponent for what I would call beforehand the working from home mummies. And shouldn't say that anymore. It's for parents as well as mummies, but that was what it was. And they were some of the hardest working people in both my teams before and this team. And so with this mindset shift, I'm really, really glad, and I hope it continues, that it is understood people are being productive just as much, even more so in cases, at home as they are if they're in the office. what we need to do as within our company, and we already started those conversations, is define what is productive in the office and what is productive more at home. Some of your kind of more project focused, when you need the very linear energy, you can do at home. And also, I don't think it's just about the venue either. I think it's also about the times. We say we're a global, and certainly my company, my claims team is a global claims team. Even if they're sitting in London or in their work at home offices, they are dealing with clients all over the world. So why not use it as an opportunity to flex into different times as well as different venues? So that's where we are with our mindset, and we are having lots of discussions about what's very important to the purpose of the office. And when I say the purpose of the office, I also mean the purpose of coming into the city. So we can go and sit in any of our co-insurers' offices or the brokers' offices to have clients meetings, but I still am a massive proponent of face-to-face, but we can discuss that later. And you asked me, what am I focusing on prioritizing in the claims service at the moment?
Yeah.
So it's really, to me, it's still all about the people. And for this instance, my people, my team, but looking at it from the customer perspective. So everyone's had to embrace massive uncertainty. So one of the biggest things that I've done is helped my team with courses and tools and everything to embrace change themselves, because they've had to embrace it personally and professionally, and kind of had to hold the hands of some of our clients through it. And clients quite rightly still demanded speed and demanded transparency and demanded communication, whatever forum it was in. So we've really, really focused on that at the moment. And then, like everyone else, we are also looking at, I think we're going to discuss it in a moment, where we are in the market modernisation journey, Blueprint 2, and we can discuss that in a moment, and also what's our internal journey. We know there are certain different types of claims, and different types of claims can have different solutions to make them the cheapest way of processing it and the fastest way of processing it, but still then focusing on understanding the data and really what the client needs at the end of the day, which robots haven't worked out empathy yet. So we still do empathy. We still do all of that experience and insights we have. That's how we can keep benefiting the customer and paying their claims quickly as.
That shirt. Oh yeah. No, it's good. Good clip that, I thought. Pretty wide ranging, and yeah, I'm going to let you comment, Ben, and then
okay. So my comments are these: that there's some things that we have talked about a lot, which Claire reflects on, which is the importance of people and face to face. And I think that is now a done deal. Everybody agrees with that. That's really important. I think that's what's starting to occupy my thoughts, though, as we hear these different conversations from people in organisations, is this balance and its productivity, really. Where are you most productive? What time of the day are you most productive? What happens when you're in a global scenario versus a local domestic? What about if you're a woman working from home with a family? Particularly, we know that's a very challenging situation and has been through COVID, but is anyway. So there's issues there about making sure that people are recognised and rewarded for their productivity, even if they're not visible to the organisation, which draws up all sorts of things. One of the things I've been thinking about a bit this week as well in this is that actually, if you think of a carpenter or a craftsman or something, their tools are really important. That's the key thing. That it's them plus their tools, okay? And I think that's true in any business nowadays. And I think of, I'm surrounded here by what people might call gadgets, but actually they're really, really important to what I do and how I do it, and they speed things up. And I'm constantly finding now and actively looking for new gadgets or software things that can actually help the business. Some of them don't, and they fall by the wayside, but some of them are fantastic. So just by example, I've just got a proofing tool that I've started using with my team just this week. Now we're up and running in 3 days, and we're all kind of madly proofing stuff together, and it's working really, really well. But that's productivity, and that's really changed something in my business in a very short period of time. And there probably are hundreds of other things out there that do that. So I think we talked about digital mindset. I think we probably have really now got to start to embrace that a bit more and not go like it's either or. I think it's a blend of the things, really. I think we've had people on here particularly from digital businesses, startups, insurtech saying, we don't need to go back to the office. We can just work from here because that's what we do as these kind of, geeky software people. But that's not true for everybody, and that might work for them, but it doesn't work for everybody. So I think it's going to be a case of perhaps, and a good thing perhaps is saying, let's look at the real productivity. Just to finish off, in the agency world, I think it's always been the case that, because they're very directly about the job that you do and then not about the policies and procedures of large bureaucracies, I think you do tend to look more directly at and balance these things out and say certain people can work at home. And so in other words, you look more closely at productivity, sometimes just because we're smaller businesses as well.
Yeah.
But we're more direct. So I think that, but I think large organizations are probably going to have to take this mindset on too, which is we've just got to look at all the different parts of our organization, not just look at it as a wash and say it's either or.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I take from Claire's, kind of thinking and where she's going to with it all. But people are obviously the most important thing. It's a strange thing to say that if there weren't any people here, what would be the point of it all?
Yeah. But for a long time, I remember when we were running the strategic HR network quite a long time ago now, but they used to have, the corporate slogan of people are the most important asset or something. And then they treat them terribly.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there was this kind of mismatch between what the statement said and what the actual thing. And then you got the rise of things like glass ceiling, was it a glass floor, where you actually got people to say what it was really like to work in an organization. Glassdoor, that's it. Sorry. So yeah, that is really interesting. I just picked up on an article I saw which kind of summarizes a lot of the stuff we've been talking about in the Harvard Business Review here. Just reasons to go back to the office, why you might want to, because it's fairly obvious for organizations why they want people to return to the office. There is a productivity thing, but there's also a cultural and I guess a leadership as well from CEOs and managers. They want to be there in the office. But this article is really brief. It's just a 5-minute read, just kind of highlights 3 areas from the individual, the employee, why they might want to go back. One of them's around culture. So doing your job remotely is efficient and you get things done and you can do it on your own time. But the things that you miss, you kind of get mission drift. So you forget what the purpose of the organization is, your role in that. And you need to understand, and everyone has to know what the core values of the organization are. And then if what happens is, outside the rules is that if you've got a strong culture like that, then people will correct individuals that are not aligning to that culture. They'll say, hey, you can't do that. That's not the way to speak to somebody on the phone, or that's not the way to do it.
Yeah.
And that naturally comes through a strong culture, and there is a danger that gets lost. Collaboration as well is picked up here. So it's harder as it's obvious, it's harder in a remote environment to do that. But it really gives those kind of moments of innovation where you have those odd conversations that are not on the agenda, and sparks innovation, I suppose, is what they're talking about there. And then the third one is about purpose, which I've already just talked to. And I just think it's really important, coming back to this ESG thing, around purpose of the organization. And it's a big opportunity, I think, for insurers to really look at the culture and the purpose of their organization and go, are we doing the right thing in the right way? And just ask some fundamental questions and then go, okay, maybe we can do things differently. Maybe we can actually not insure that. We might want to insure this. Yeah. It's a good opportunity, I feel, anyway.
It is. And I think it's being set up. I think the Mark Carney take on this is probably the most eloquent about what it really is about. It's about setting up a future where companies compete to be greener and compete to be better, and around employees, around this. actually, your point earlier on about whether people would want to work for organisations or not is key, really. I think in the end, this comes back to leadership, as it always does, because the best led companies will always attract the best people. And if those leaders say, look, we'd like you in the office for these reasons, whatever those reasons are, people will do it, right? And I think we know that just paying people, a bit more doesn't cut the mustard now with a lot of people. And there's lots of people who say that, although pay does still matter enormously, of course, and remuneration. So, but I think there is a heavy focus now, I think, on leadership and how it articulates what it's going to do for its business. And as you say, what's the mission? Why are we here? What are we doing? Whereas before, a lot of them didn't do that. I mean, I think insurance is notorious for not having good, clear strategies. Comfortable lives. Any research I've done, people are quite comfortable with the pay and rations, and the places aren't often some parts of them not that demanding necessarily in terms of long hours, like banking. But that is also going to change because the competition is ratcheting up. So in a way, you can see a future where people will be doing long hours, but because they're competing on greener, wholesome things, not fighting over kind of horrid fossil fuel-y type stuff. But in the end, the competition doesn't change. But I think the way that you lead companies and the transparency is going to be really important in all of this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a massive area, and discretionary effort. If you're working for a company and you believe in what the company is about, your role in it, you will give more time and effort to it. No matter your hours, say you're 9 to 5, you might do, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do this because I want to do it. I enjoy it. And I can see how it's going to impact wider society and everything else. So yeah, it's huge. And I can't wait to get into it, actually.
Yeah, be good.
Good. Right. What are you doing this weekend, Ben?
Well, tomorrow I'm going cycling, so I haven't done that for a while, not properly anyway. So I've got to go. I've got to.
Is
that you? That's me, just behind there. Yes, yeah. just catching up with Pogacar. If that's him, yeah. No, he's going to win on Sunday, and I will also watch the cycling on Sunday, and hope that Cavendish could win on the Champs-Élysées.
Yes, indeed. That would be very exciting, actually. I think he's got a good chance. Yep. Pogacar's got all the shirts apart from the green, which is incredible.
Yeah, it is.
Brilliant.
It's done very. It's been amazing to watch. Yeah.
The last 2 days have been great.
What are you up to?
I am. Well, I've got my parents here, so I think the weather's going to be good. So it's going to be a lot of barbecuing and just relaxing and catching up. I think that's it. And yeah, we're big Tour de France family, so Sunday will be a big Parisian day.
At least we can't lose, eh?
Yeah, we're not talking about that one.
No, I don't know what I was referring to there.
No, me neither. Anyway, I'm over that now.
So
it only took me a couple of days, but I'm over it now, so that's good.
I've got a psychological trick which I just immediately shut off when the penalties finish.
That's exactly what I did. I just turned everything off and went to bed.
Yeah, I did. And I just went up and just read the paper for half an hour. Thought, yeah, that's it. I'm just going to shut it out. I'm not going to. It didn't.
Never happened.
Never happened.
Good, excellent. Right, thanks so much, everybody. See you all next week. Enjoy the weekend in the sun.
Yeah, enjoy, everybody. Bye.